So you've entered a new stage in your life. Congrats, friends. Maybe you're graduating high school or graduating college and looking for a job, or maybe you're looking for a change of scenery and need to find another place to work. It can be nerve-wracking going to a new place and starting over, and one of the most ominous things to confront can be the interviews that stand between you and your next job or school. You get dressed up in nice clothes, practice your smile, and keep from sweating through the cotton as you try to expect unexpected questions. Why do you put on your nicest outfit before meeting these strangers when they're there to fit you for a job? First impressions are given a lot of weight in popular culture. But are first impressions really that important? People try to impress each other even before they have had any meaningful interaction. It turns out that in general, people are good at making decisions about others based off first impressions, also known as consensus at zero acquaintance or zero acquaintance decisions. It turns out you don't even need much information to make decisions about people. A study looking at gait and personality trait judgments found that even when reduced to point light stimuli, where the subject is reduced to a series of moving points representing joints like knees, elbows, or hips, people could watch the moving points and make verdicts about the person they were observing. Additionally, different people rate the walker comparably, suggesting that people were translating the social cues similarly. For instance, if one person guessed that the moving joints belong to an extroverted man, chances are other people in the study also perceive the points to belong to an extroverted male. Curiously enough, these judgments were not accurate, meaning that though people rated the walkers similarly, they did not match the walkers' self-reported traits. While this is interesting to note, interviewers and recruiters have a lot more information than just points of movement in a computer program. Their conclusions could be much more accurate. While looking at people's gait through point light simulations made it difficult to make accurate decisions about people's personality traits, many studies have found that people are good at making quick decisions on personality traits and first impressions. That might be a good thing, considering that, at least where information is lacking, people tend to prefer others who they see to be more like themselves. In a study looking at political preferences, Drs. Koppensteiner and Stephan from University of Vienna chose 40 speeches from both male and female politicians in German parliament and took 15-second random bits of video. They extracted the audio so that the decisions had to be based on visual cues from politicians only. Participants were tasked with scoring each politician on the Big Five personality traits and then identified whether or not they would vote for the politician they were watching. The participants found that emotional stability, agreeableness, and openness personality traits were most important in deciding whom to vote for, and that participants voted for politicians whom they rated similarly to their own emotional stability. If a voter rated him or herself low in emotional stability, they would tend to vote for politicians whom they rated to have low emotional stability based off their body language, and vice versa. This corroborates with other findings showing that people prefer others that are similar to them in some regard. Again, a recruiter has more than just visual cues, so their zero acquaintance decisions have more sources to draw from. This might just solidify the assumptions that they make, and it seems a person's subjective feelings about you can have an effect on their decision to pursue you. Interestingly enough, factors like gender and personality of the observer might influence how people perceive you during your first impression. There is long-standing evidence that women are generally better at perceiving emotions in people's faces than men, especially when the facial cues are subtle. Researchers have also found that people's ability to pick up on feelings is affected by personality traits. For instance, extroverts react more strongly to positive signals of reward than introverts do. In a study based out of the University of Bologna in Italy, university students, both male and female, were shown pictures of emotionally neutral faces and asked whether or not the person in the picture seemed trustworthy. There were 20 trustworthy faces, 20 neutral faces, and 20 untrustworthy faces. The results showed that women rated the trustworthy faces as significantly more trustworthy than men did, but there was no difference in how they rated neutral and untrustworthy faces. This is especially interesting when you consider women were actually less confident in their ratings of trustworthiness than men were. While the authors suggest that more research should include gender in zero acquaintance research, They admit that the gender differences are small and researchers should be careful when interpreting the results. The authors also found that individuals who self-reported as more agreeable in a questionnaire administered either before or after the experiment scored trustworthy faces as more trustworthy than their counterparts, and people who reported higher aggression perceived trustworthy faces as less trustworthy than their counterparts. This was only found in the women of the study. Finally, women seemed to rate female faces as more trustworthy than male faces. However, this might be because trustworthy faces tend to have more feminine, childlike features. These findings suggest that the type of person you interact with can ultimately change the way you are perceived in a first impression. Okay, while this is all very interesting, what does this mean for you in your interview? Well, studies by Dr. Daniel Kahneman, a leader in the psychology of decision-making, suggest that decision-making is a two-part process consisting of an intuitive judgment stage and a separate rational processing stage. The current literature suggests that recruiters and interviewers use the same system when deciding whom to hire. Does this suggest that a good first impression could help you progress in your job-seeking process? A study by Drs. Barrick, Swider, and Stewart in 2010 set out to see if this was the case. While many recruiters use structured interviews for their process, there is oftentimes small talk or some other pre-interview interaction that gives the interviewer enough information to make a zero-acquaintance decision, potentially in as little as 100 milliseconds. Barrick and al. Wanted to know if zero-acquaintance impressions of competence could predict the recruiter's post-interview ratings. The job candidates were in the accounting school. These accounting students were promised interviews for internships at local accounting firms and were told to treat the mock interviews as real interviews. Astonishingly, they found that good first impressions on a recruiter correlated to better interviewer ratings and even predicted later employment decisions. That means if the interviewer liked them in the first moments of meeting them, chances are they liked them at the end of the interview as well. Even when interviews started immediately, not allowing for small talk, they made zero acquaintance decisions and the results were the same. These first impressions regarding competence were consistent across interviewers, meaning that different interviewers had similar ratings of the job seekers based off of first impressions. Furthermore, while competence is the main contributor in predicting the outcome of the job seeker, affect, or the experience of an emotion, and similarity to the recruiter still correlated with the results. This could suggest that when abilities are even between job seekers, the recruiter might push for the person who is more similar to themselves or who is nicer to be around. Since research suggests that something as small as the way you dress and a smile can influence how you are perceived, it might be a good idea to go ahead and put in the extra effort to look nice. The authors suggest that these findings mean that interviewers do take into account their first impressions. Now, we know that first impressions don't require much information or time and can contribute to recruiters' decisions of who to employ. But the recruiter is tasked with finding the best person for the job, while the job seeker wants to get the job regardless of whether he or she is the best fit. That means job seekers might try to be dishonest to get the job. Are recruiters better at judging personality traits and uncovering deception than the average person? Generally speaking, people don't do well unearthing deception. In fact, in a study in 2001, judges, attorneys, policemen, and even polygraphers only uncovered deception at chance level. Only U.S. Secret Service professionals did much better than chance at recognizing deception. A study produced out of the University of Neuchâtel in Switzerland aimed to see whether recruiters could see through deception they might encounter in an interview and whether they were better at discerning character traits than laypeople. 51 recruiters and 80 university students watched a total of 10 short videos, 6 to gauge personality and 4 to gauge deception detection. The participants were asked to gauge the personality traits based off of the answers and body language from the interviewer's question. Both recruiters and students accurately detected personality profiles, which takes into account all of the big 5 personality traits weighted against each other. Recruits were ultimately better at determining personality profiles than laypeople. On the other hand, recruiters could only judge the personality trait openness accurately, while students could accurately judge openness, extroversion, and conscientiousness. The authors suggest that because recruiters are supposed to look at the entire package and not just a specific character trait, recruiters might, through experience, learn to observe the holistic person. It is interesting, however, since conscientiousness has been determined as a trait that best predicts future job performance, according to the study from the University of Iowa. Yet, recruiters seem unable to gauge this trait. There are some personality traits that are more beneficial from different jobs, however, like extroversion for jobs that require social interactions, such as sales. So there might be some recruiters that are better at picking up different personality traits. Impressively, recruiters were better than chance at detecting deception, while students, like most of the population, could not detect deception better than chance. It looks like their jobs have trained them to detect liars. First impressions definitely have an impact on future interactions, and can even be accurate. As professionals, recruiters base their decisions primarily on how competent the person is. But even job recruiters can't help letting first impressions influence their decisions. That being said, there are a couple things you can do to improve your first impression on a recruiter. 1. If possible, you can research the person who is interviewing you to find similarities you can capitalize on. You can also be generally pleasant with appropriate clothing and smiles to leave the recruiter in a good mood. Don't bother lying to them because chances are they can call you out on your bluff. Be honest, show your personality, and put your best foot forward. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in any of the information given in this video, sources are in the description below.